In this lecture, we will review the bystander effect. So, why do people fail to help? We like to think of ourselves as good, moral people, capable of empathy and compassion. Pro-social behavior benefits our relatives, friends, and groups, benefit victims, and psychologically benefit ourselves. At this point, we might expect that being helpful will always be the norm. But we can probably think of times when we passed by a panhandler without giving him money, closed the door on a solicitor seeking donations for a local charity, or made excuses to a friend looking for a ride to the airport. The fact of the matter is that we don't always give or receive help. The flip side of looking at variables that elevate our helpful tendencies is to consider those that inhibit helping. So let's now review the bystander effect. In the early morning hours on a cold day in March, Kitty Genovese returned home after work. As she walked towards her apartment building in Queens, New York, she was attacked from behind and stabbed in the back. The perpetrator continued to assault and stab her in a brutal attack that lasted over 30 minutes. During this time, Genovese cried for help, screamed that she had been stabbed, and tried to fight off her assailant. A New York newspaper reported that 38 people had witnessed the attack from their apartment windows, and yet no one called the police until the attack had ended. Unfortunately, by then, it was too late. She died on the way to the hospital. At the time, people took this horrific episode as evidence of the moral discrimination of New Yorkers. Not just the murderer, but also the witnesses who did not act. Although there has been some recent debate about whether the newspaper report exaggerated the number of witnesses. There were clearly more than enough witnesses to expect someone to have picked up the phone and called the police, yet no one did. This event inspired Lantane Darley and Bev Knox to engage in a groundbreaking set of studies documenting the bystander effect. The bystander effect generally refers to a phenomenon in which a person who witnesses another in need is less likely to help when there are other bystanders present to witness the event. On the surface, this idea seems ironic. Shouldn't the presence of other witnesses encourage individuals to help? The interesting fact of psychology is that sometimes the presence of others can make an individual inactive, although, as we will see, this can happen for a few different reasons. So again, the question is, why do people fail to help? Although people are capable of empathy and compassion, their current situation powerfully influences their decision about whether to help. So again, the bystander effect, the greater the number of witnesses to a situation requiring help, the less likely any one of the witnesses will help. So let's talk about helping or not helping in an emergency. Helping behaviors results from several steps in sequence. 1. Attending to and interpreting the situation as an emergency. 2. Taking responsibility for helping. 3. Deciding how to help. And 4, a cost-benefit analysis. At any step, some aspect of the situation, such as the presence of others, can short-circuit the helping of one person to another. Now, in regards to population density, in bigger cities, despite a denser population, people tend to be less willing to help strangers. So, who is most likely to help? Although situations matter, there are meaningful individual differences in pro-social tendencies. First, altruism. Personality traits such as moral reasoning, sense of social responsibility, and empathy predict altruism. Next, there is individual differences. People who identify themselves as being moral and helpful generally are more pro-social. And next, political values. Political conservatives and liberals endorse different moral foundations, making them more or less likely to help, depending on their moral interpretation of the situation. And lastly, gender. Women are generally seen as being more pro-social, but in some situations, men are more willing to help.